Hello, I am Saurabh Rana. I am Assistant Professor at Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. Today we shall discuss the module on social and economic barriers to access to justice. The learning outcomes of which shall be knowledge of the concept of access to justice and various facets of social and economic barriers to access to justice, appreciating the approach of government and judiciary towards social welfare, understanding the reasons behind judicial overreach, and appreciating the approach of lawyers towards legal aid schemes. On the eve of independence, we, the people of India, made a tryst with destiny to redeem each one of us in this country from deprivation and denial of access to justice. The preamble of the Constitution of India prized open the access to justice, social, political, as well as economic, to the citizens of this country. However, today, after almost 70 years, the vast masses of this country are still reeling under the hunger, and people's expectations have darkened into the doom of despair. Denial of access to justice is probably the greatest injustice done to the marginalized, poor, excluded, and the underprivileged sections of the society. Now that the poor has ceased to be a matter of concern, it is high time that the doors of the justice be wide opened for the lowly and the lost of this country. Access to justice. Justice is an institution for social engineering created by human agents to serve social needs and secure economic interests of the poor and downtrodden to the maximum extent possible by eliminating all the historical conflicts and frictions prevalent in the society. Expectation of justice is inherent in every human being. Denying access to justice creates a ripple effect. For example, if the guilty police official could not be appropriately dealt with in case of a custodial death by reason of some social or economic barriers before the victim family, their belief in the establishment is shaken beyond repair. Similarly, if a member of the deprived section cannot approach the court of law to get the redressal of discrimination meted out to him in any walk of life, it will likely end up his falling deeper into the trench of various divides in the society. Traditional concept of access to justice is the access to the courts of law. However, in the present context, access to justice is not confined to the access to the docket of a court, but it requires that the litigant, irrespective of the strata of the society to which he belongs, is treated fairly in the precincts of the court, and ultimately his case reaches at a just decision within a reasonable span of time. Social and economic barriers to this access to justice. In India, values and practice of social and economic rights run counter to the centuries-old hierarchy and oppression, where the principle of equality was almost unknown. These segments of oppressed people did not get access to justice because either they were unaware of their rights or they were located in such situation where they did not have means to seek legal redressal for their grievance, even if it touched upon the basics of their lives. Here, we shall briefly discuss the social and economic barriers to the realization of justice by the underprivileged, indigent, and helpless individuals. Social barriers to access to justice. The ground realities of human rights in India are far from satisfactory. For this unsatisfactory situation, blame is sometimes assigned to Indian tradition, which is supposed to be anti-human. However, its leaders like Swami Dayanand, Swami Vivekanand, Mahatma Gandhi, and many others have successfully denounced such practices as corruption of the tradition. The Constitution of India, which lays down that the state shall strive to secure a social order in which justice, social, economical, and political, shall inform all the institutions of life, is an instrument for the weaker sections of the society who have been historically denied access to justice due to their social standing. We shall first discuss some of the main social barriers to access to justice. Caste. In India, within the precincts of a religion, there are other forces which are stronger than the bonds of that religion and which keep people divided and sometimes bring them even in identity with the people of other religions rather than those of their own religion. No wonder that India is considered as a country only of castes and minorities. Membership in a caste is conferred by birth and is unalterable. Each caste is assigned the path which the members thereof must follow. That is the traditional notion of dharma. The inequalities in the lives were explained and justified by the theory of karma and rebirth. The balance of positive and negative values of one's action in previous lives was to be manifested in the station of his rebirth. Progress through successive rebirths to a higher caste was to be the result of properly fulfilling the dharma determined by one's caste. So, the ideology behind the hierarchy justified and rationalized resignation to inferior status of lower castes. It was in this background that a large fraction of population was subjected to numerous disabilities such as denial or restriction of access to public facilities like wells, schools, courts, temples, residential segregation by requiring them to remain outside the village, deference in forms of language and standing in presence of higher castes, liability to render unremunerated labor for the higher castes, and performance of menial services for them, to name a few. Thus, through the system of castes, a humongous population was systematically degraded and made to endure perpetual slavery with little hope of access to any notion of justice for them. Illiteracy. It is a fact, rather shameful on our part, that in India more than 40% of the population suffers from illiteracy. That is, around 50 crore people cannot read and write. In this situation, the benevolent aims and aspirations flowing from the preamble of the Constitution, the limitations on the state action in the form of fundamental rights kept in Part 3, and the ideas expressed through directive principles in Part 4 of the Constitution remain dead letters for them, and any access to justice administration system remains a distant dream. Awareness. It is an irony that law does not form part of the syllabi at pre-graduation or graduation level of the education system of this country, where law has a social purpose and has a great role to play in fulfilling the growing aspirations of the people. The inevitable result is that even if literate, people have no access to normative and institutional information concerning the legal system. There is no all India collection of laws in force throughout the territory of India. There is not even an index. The reasons advanced by the government that the government press cannot undertake such voluminous work, that rapid amendments would make such publications regularly obsolete, and that the costs involved would be too high seem to be shallow. If consumers, beneficiaries, and victims of law in urban India have such problem of accessibility to normative laws, one might well despair of communication by law to the rural masses. This situation is further compounded by absence of any serious initiative on the part of state to publish and communicate the laws, bylaws, regulations and notification, etc. to the common man in the society. Legal illiteracy of the real beneficiaries of social welfare legislations and the constitutional scheme contributes to their ineffectiveness and consequently blocks the access to justice. Delay. Practically, the trial court is the supreme court of the poor, and as he cannot move up in the hierarchy of the multi-tier judicial system, an efficient and incompetent judiciary, insufficient number of judicial officers, and incompetent and corrupt ministerial staff, the diverse delaying tactics adopted by the litigants and their lawyers, and the corrupt environment wherein service of summons by the process staff is a source of rampant corruption creates an adverse reputation of judiciary, especially that of the subordinate judiciary at district level in the mind of masses, which ultimately creates a kind of barrier leaving the lower strata of the society devoid of any desire to access the justice administrative system of the establishment. Practicing lawyers. Access to justice means not only just access to courts, but it also means and requires the access to dispensers of legal services, that is, the practicing lawyers. It is a general notion in the society that the lawyers do not help much in arriving at the settlement of disputes. On the contrary, it is sometimes felt that they tend to make endeavors for prolonging the conflicts, rather making them bitter. Courts are used to further rather than solve disputes. Many observers have pointed out that the lawyers help their clients to use the legal system as a weapon to be brought to bear on their opponents. Hence, an anti-lawyer sentiment prevails in India based on their negative image as perpetuators of disputes, which manifests itself in discouragement to the common men of the society to approach the lawyers for getting redressal of the wrongs committed against him or enforcement of the rights guaranteed to him. Reputation of courts. For a common man, the court of law is the place where justice is meted out. However, it is also a fact that people do not carry a positive image of the judiciary, especially that functioning at the district level. One of the complaints against the magistrates is that they are not competent enough and also that they come from upper and upper middle class families and therefore do not do justice to the lower and untouchable castes. Both court clerks and munshis are also viewed as corrupt functionaries. In this state of affairs, the negative imagery of the trial courts virtually blocks the access to justice for the backward sections of the society. Economic barriers to access to justice. In the modern world, where money can buy almost anything under the sun, the real cause of denial of access to justice seems to be the lack of economic resources with the lower strata of the society. It is the general feeling in the society that the poor and indigent do not actually have any right to get enforced through state machinery, locking people out of the justice delivery system because they cannot afford the exorbitant cost of navigating the multi-tier legal system tantamounts to degrading them systematically and perpetually. The Constitution of India, through directive principles, provides for the right to the adequate means of livelihood to every citizen, ownership of material resources of the community, and their distribution for the common good of the people. However, it is the irony that justice in India is so costly, time-consuming, and tormented by ups and downs in the multi-tier hierarchical courts that the people at grassroots level are priced out of the system. Finding no real access to justice, they lose the faith in the establishment, which is a dangerous feeling in a democratic setup of a country like India. Let us briefly discuss some situations where access to justice is denied to the depressed sections of the society due to the economic constraints. Poverty. Unlike the West, where people in general have reached a level of economic and social well-being, in India, most of the violations of these rights occur because of the absence of such well-being. Therefore, in India, the question is not whether the social and economic rights are rights or not, but whether these preconditions for the realization of such rights exist or not. Unless these conditions exist, violation of rights cannot be effectively dealt with. Hence, a basic economic standing is required for raising voice to realize one's socio-economic rights, howsoever emphatically they are enumerated in the statute books or in the Constitution. This basic economic standing is absent in case of a litigant who barely manages the cash flow required for the sustenance of his family. So, if he even thinks of getting redressal of any wrong done to him, the alienation of some valuable movable property, most of the times some gold jewelry, or of some immovable property is inevitable for him. On the other hand, Indian judicial system involves a costly and complex procedure of litigation, the exuberant court fee, and various other logistics expenses, lawyer's fee, and on top of it, the loss of income for a daily wager, all together render the courts of law inaccessible on account of the financial barrier. Performance of legal aid schemes. Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 was enacted to give a statutory basis to the legal aid initiative throughout the country. However, the legal professionals posing as custodians of the poor engage themselves in a lot of gimmickry without doing any service to their cause in the real sense. Lack of any substantive concern on the part of the lawyers with the endemic problem of poverty, and instead using the slogan of aid the poor only to generate more work is a poor indicator of the professional's potential to use and apply law in favor of the poor. Incompetent, half-hearted, or with vested interests, legal aid takes the cause of the poor litigants in the middle of nowhere and abandons him. This breach of trust completely eradicates the credibility of the legal aid initiative in the eyes of its beneficiaries and rather operates as a barrier to access to justice, which runs contrary to the very purpose of its creation. Court fees. The Indian state has retained the colonial system of imposition of court fee and indeed made the fees nearly exorbitant over the course of last 50 years. The 14th Law Commission report, with a thorough analysis of budgets on the administration of justice, shows that the amount raised through the court fees was not merely adequate for meeting the expenses for administration of justice, but resulted in surplus which was appropriated to the general revenue of the state concerned. The 54th Law Commission report reiterated it. However, this absurd tax on litigation in the name of court fees continues to make the legal system undemocratically expensive and poses itself as a significant barrier to the access to justice for a common man. Delay. In the delayed procession of a case, it has been a common phenomena that both the parties wish the earliest possible outcome, more than a distant favorable one. It is because their energy and resources are stuck up in the ongoing litigation, especially when the court has already passed an ad interim order or a status quo order in the case. Otherwise also, the trial court, then the automatic first appeal, oftentimes a second appeal, and in some cases another appeal to a division bench within the same court, and in heavier suits a voyage to the Supreme Court. The bankruptcy beckons to both the parties at the end of it all. A disappointed or intoxicated litigant chases every remedy, wearing himself and his opponent out oftentimes to discover that the damsel of justice has played the vanishing trick. Hence, delaying disposal of a litigation has a ruining after effect, irrespective of the outcome, which again tantamounts to a barrier on the access to justice. Lawyers. Researches done at the district level demonstrate a highly mercenary attitude on the part of lawyers. They regard their clients as mere instrument for making profit. Ideally, lawyers should serve all segments of society, but lawyers seem to serve mostly the upper and middle classes. Only economically well-off people can avail lawyers' services, particularly of the one who is professionally reputed. The stature of a lawyer is graded in proportion to the fees he manages to charge from his clients. There is no surprise that legal services market becomes essentially a seller's market, which in turn creates an economic barrier for the poor and indigent in getting a competent legal representation for ensuring him a real access to justice. Instruments to ensure access to justice. As we have discussed above, that in India, the question is not whether the social and economic rights are rights or not, but whether the social and economic well-being as a condition precedent for the realization of such rights exists. Such condition precedent of socio-economic well-being cannot be afforded just by restraining the state from interference in the affairs of the individual. It requires positive action from the state, not just in the form of policing, but through the empowerment of the common man. Such an empowerment is not possible without state support and action. Hence, there is a pressing need of the close cooperation between the state and the society for the empowerment of the poor and vulnerable. Here we shall discuss some such instances. Public interest litigation. In the last 3 decades, the Indian Supreme Court has taken lead in democratizing the access to justice through the judicial system, which has hitherto remained a paradise of repeat players who had mastered the art of using courts for their own vested interests. For providing easy access to the judicial process at the highest level, the Supreme Court not only liberalized the procedural aspects by opening up the rule of locus standi and taking suo motu cognizance of news items from various media, etc., but also infused life in the dead letters of fundamental rights and directive principles enshrined in the Constitution of India and turned them into a weapon for the oppressed. Consequently, there are judgments of the courts covering a wide gamut of subjects such as issues relating to human rights, custodial deaths, illegal detentions, prison conditions, right to shelter, the right to livelihood, the right to clean and pollution-free environment, maintaining the ecological balance, the rights of women and children, emancipation of bonded labor, the right to better working conditions, issues relating to public administration and public life, the nexus between criminals and politicians, issues relating to economic policy and the right to education, etc. In the process, various constituencies oppressed and unrepresented in the past found access to justice administration system. Emboldened by the everyday disclosure of criminal politician nexus through various media and realizing its role in social engineering while taking the sufferings of the common man seriously, the Supreme Court expanded the poverty and rights jurisprudence mainly with the underpinning of Articles 14, 21, 22 Clause 1, Article 38, Article 39A of the Constitution, so as to include the whole gamut of social economic rights provided in the directive principles of the Constitution and made the oppression of the citizenry of this country the focal point of the whole judicial discourse on human rights and constitutional empowerment. Legal initiative. The empowerment of the weak and oppressed cannot be achieved solely by the litigation in the court of law. Rather, it requires an understanding on the part of state that it must take certain positive steps to mitigate the perpetuated hardship and rigor on the depressed sections of the society. It is through the process of law that the benefits which were denied to the backward sections of this country for centuries altogether can reach them. Hence, in its welfare avatar, the state has expanded the jurisprudence of access to justice and thereby provided both judicial and alternate dispute resolution mechanism through various enactments and amendments of statutes. Various legal services authorities are established at national, state and district level through the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 for the purpose of providing free legal aid services to the deprived sections of the society. Under this act, free legal aid is provided to the citizens depending upon the criteria of their annual income. This qualification of income becomes irrelevant in case of persons belonging to the category of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, women, children and physically handicapped, etc. Also, through this act, a statutory basis was provided to Lok Adalats on a national basis. The concept of Lok Adalat utilizes the expertise of judicial officers, both serving or retired, in the resolutions of the disputes by way of reconciliation. The award passed by the Lok Adalat is executable like a decree of civil court and no appeal lies against it. Hence, the litigation effectively comes to an end. In the same manner, the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996, providing a broader framework for arbitration and conciliation, especially useful in commercial disputes, has been reformed to suit the needs of the present globalization era by incorporating the concept of foreign arbitration award in a practical manner. Consumer Protection Act 1986 was enacted to provide a speedy, effective and less expensive redressal mechanism for consumer grievance to remove the curse of the civil courts. Without there being any requirement for engagement of a lawyer to represent the case, this act significantly opens up the access to justice for common men in consumer affairs. In the same manner, the Family Courts Act 94 provided for the family courts to promote conciliation in family affairs so that a settlement may be reached before the commencement of the case. Apart from this, the two major procedural codes, CRPC in the form of Section 304 and CPC in the form of Order 33 and Order 44, contain provisions for ensuring access to justice to the indigent and resourceless people. Apart from the above laws, the state through other social welfare legislations like Protection of Civil Rights Act, Minimum Wages Act, Equal Remuneration Act and Contract Labour Act, etc., protect the interest of the vulnerable class of the society and provide them the access to justice. Court fee. An argument is made in favor of the exorbitant court fee that it avoids a somewhat greater evil of frivolous institution of suits. However, if we dig deeper in this argument, we find that the sole reason for unjust suits is unjust decision by the judiciary. It is just the dubious reputation of the whole system of administration of justice which breeds the institution of frivolous suits. Putting the court fee high may result in surplus of revenue for the state, but it certainly drives away the needy plaintiffs from the doors of the court. Hence, there is a strong case for at least lowering, if not altogether abolishing, this barrier on the litigation for the sake of poor and deprived. Awareness. In the democratic setup of this country, the regime of secret laws is clearly opposite to the concept of free access to justice. It must be the utmost urgency on the part of state to weed out the obsolete laws and create a collection of all central and state laws in operation. Today, with the aid of information technology, it is not an insurmountable task for the state agencies. Apart from the above instrumentalities, all those associated with the court of law in any capacity, be it judges, lawyers, court staff, process serving agency, and other paraphernalia, must understand that their working is never compared with that in a factory or in some other government office. Rather, they are the trustees of the belief and faith of the common man in the whole establishment. Hence, the most sacrosanct duty on their part is to conduct themselves in such a manner so as to ensure that the common man is not scared of going to court of law for the redressal of the wrong committed against him. And those who have already entered into litigation get just decision in a reasonable span of time and on reasonable expenses. Also, both literacy as well as legal education thereafter shall serve the purpose of providing access to the vast masses, at least as to the contents of the statutes and of the Constitution of India. Also, it is imperative on the part of state agencies that even the literates of the society become aware of their legal and constitutional rights and duties. There seems to be no pertinent reason why the fundamental aspects of the Constitution of India and of some major laws such as criminal law, family law, etc. should not be made part of the syllabi, at least up to 10+2 level. Such education shall create a culture of knowledge of rights and consciousness of duties in the Indian society and shall act as a catalyst for providing the real access to justice to the common man in the street. Concluding, we say that the respect for law and justice through the state establishment diminishes when large segments of society do not get equal and effective access to justice. Asking for justice should not be like asking for moon, as it is no crime to be poor or to take birth in a particular section of the society. Fortunately, the Indian Supreme Court is leaving no stone unturned in discharging its constitutional responsibility, for which it has received tremendous popular support and moral legitimacy. No apex court in the world has, with such investment of high intendment, not only democratized the access to justice, but also attained the human-oriented outcomes to ameliorate the weight of suffering of the downtrodden. However, in the process, apart from the judicialization of politics and politicization of judicial process, one may see the other perils associated with the court's marathon efforts to give juridical effect to the directive principle, as the financial burdens, which at times may even threaten the integrity of the whole budgetary process, administrative burdens, and also the political burdens, which may ultimately render its decisions futile for want of enforcement. However, the creeping jurisdiction of the Supreme Court remains justified by executive inaction, legislative indifference, and the consequent bad governance, rather the absence of governance. The renaissance of the Indian judicial process has successfully shown the way to mold the voice of the multitude for the purpose of articulation of one's own powers. Now it is the turn of the other organs of the state and the upper strata of the society to show up to the expectations, as the courts cannot do what the government and the society will not do. The power of contempt is an inadequate persuader to extract and enforce social welfare. Lawyers, as officers of the court of law, must take the legal aid program with utmost sincerity, as the token implementation of this social initiative would rather do more harm than it is intended to avoid. In fact, it would tantamount to punishing the indigent litigant through the state action even before his case starts in the court of law. It is better to live in a state of real despair than to have an unreal hope. The pressing need of the present day is the close cooperation among all the organs of the state with all those who matter in the society, and thereby creation of an environment where the weak and vulnerable can be empowered. Independence must no more remain for them the transfer of powers from white to brown bosses, but the coming into existence of a state which Mahatma Gandhi envisaged for them before the independence, which strives for the welfare of its citizens and which provides access to justice to one and all without any barrier. Thank you.